Let's zoom out for a second and talk about why this matters right now. In late 2024, early 2025, global debt levels are at historic highs. According to the International Monetary Fund, global public debt is projected to exceed $100 trillion by the end of 2024. That's government debt alone, not counting corporate or household debt. As a percentage of global GDP, public debt is hovering around 93%, the highest it has been. Outside of wartime or the immediate aftermath of the financial crisis in 2008, the United States is carrying $36 trillion in federal debt. That number has doubled in roughly 10 years. It's accelerating. Every year, the interest payments on that debt grow larger. In 2024, the U.S. government is projected to spend over $1 trillion just on interest payments. That's more than the defense budget. More than Medicare, it's the fastest growing part of the federal budget. And it's mostly invisible to the average person because it doesn't fund anything tangible. It's just servicing the cost of past borrowing. Japan's D/GDP ratio is over 260%, the highest in the developed world. Yet Japan hasn't collapsed. Its borrowing costs remain low. Why? Because the Bank of Japan owns nearly half of all Japanese government bonds. The government borrows from the central bank, which creates the money to lend, which means Japan is essentially funding itself. It's a closed loop, and as long as inflation stays controlled and people trust the yen, the system holds. China's debt situation is murkier because much of it is hidden in local government financing vehicles and state-owned enterprises. But estimates put total Chinese government debt somewhere between $15 and $20 trillion when you include all the off-balance sheet obligations. China's economy is slowing. Its real estate sector is in crisis. And yet it continues to function, continues to grow, continues to lend and borrow on a scale that would sink smaller nations. Europe is a patchwork. Germany runs surpluses and keeps debt low. Italy and Greece are drowning in obligations they'll never fully repay under current traditions. The European Central Bank tries to hold it all together by buying bonds from member states, which creates tension because fiscally responsible countries end up indirectly subsidizing fiscally irresponsible ones. It's a political nightmare wrapped in a financial instrument. Everywhere you look, debt is the common denominator. And everywhere you look, the solution is the same. Borrow more. Let the central bank absorb it. Keep interest rates low enough that the payments stay manageable. And hope growth eventually outpaces the borrowing. It's worked for decades. That doesn't mean it will work forever. Let's get into the mechanics of how this debt actually gets created, because the process is far weirder than most people realize. Imagine the U.S. Treasury needs to raise $50 billion to cover a budget shortfall. It doesn't just ask the Fed to hand over the cash. Instead, it holds an auction. It announces that it's selling $50 billion in Treasury bonds, and it invites buyers to bid. Primary dealers, which are major financial institutions like Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, and others, participate in these auctions. They submit bids for how much of the debt they want to buy, and at what interest rate. The Treasury accepts the lowest interest rate bids first, because obviously it wants to borrow as cheaply as possible. Once the auction closes, those primary dealers now own the bonds. But here's where it gets interesting. Those primary dealers don't necessarily want to hold $50 billion in Treasury bonds, so they turn around and sell them. Some go to pension funds. Some go to foreign governments. Some go to insurance companies. and some go to the Federal Reserve. The Fed doesn't participate directly in Treasury auctions. That would be too obvious. Too much like the central bank directly financing the government, which is technically illegal in the U.S. under the Federal Reserve Act. But the Fed can buy bonds in the secondary market, which is the market where bonds are traded after the initial auction. So the primary dealers buy the bonds from the Treasury, then sell them to the Fed a few days or weeks later. The Fed pays for those bonds by creating new money, which the primary dealers now have, which they can lend out or invest, which increases the money supply. It's a shell game. The Treasury borrows from the dealers sell to the Fed creates money, and the result is the government has funded its deficit without technically having the central bank print money to hand directly to the government. Everyone maintains plausible deniability. This process is called quantitative easing when it's done on a large scale. The Fed used it aggressively after the 2008 financial crisis, buying trillions in treasury bonds and mortgage-backed securities to stabilize the economy. It used it again during the COVID pandemic, expanding its balance sheet by nearly $5 trillion in a matter of months. The Fed's balance sheet, which is essentially a record of all the assets it holds, ballooned from under $4 trillion in early 2022, nearly $9 trillion by mid-2022. That money didn't come from anywhere. It was created, the Fed credited accounts, and suddenly there were trillions more dollars in the financial system. Those dollars flowed into markets, into businesses, into households, through stimulus checks and unemployment benefits. And because all that money was chasing roughly the same amount of goods and services, prices started to rise. Inflation, which had been dormant for years, came roaring back. By 2022, inflation in the U.S. hit 9%, the highest in 4 decades. The Fed, which had spent years creating money to buy bonds and keep the economy afloat, suddenly had to reverse course. It started raising interest rates to cool down the economy and slow inflation. Higher interest rates make borrowing more expensive, which reduces spending, which in theory reduces demand, which brings prices down. But here's the problem. When interest rates rise, the cost of servicing government debt raises. The Treasury has to pay higher interest on new bonds it issues, and because the U.S. government constantly rolls over its debt, meaning it issues new bonds to pay off old bonds as they mature. Higher rates mean higher costs across the board. This is the trap. The government borrows to fund deficits. The Fed buys the debt to keep the economy stable. Inflation rises because there's too much money in the system. The Fed raises rates to fight inflation. Higher rates make government debt more expensive. The government has to borrow even more to cover the increased interest payments. And the cycle continues. It's a treadmill that only runs faster.